Crawl up in this bed with me. Get cozy up in these sheets, girl. Turn whatever you please, yeah. Look, I'ma keep it simple. If you could take this invitation and just come over to mine, I'll let you decide.
Welcome to the KYP podcast, a show about letting go of things that prevent you from reaching your dreams and being yourself unapologetically. My name is Danny. I'm here with my co-host,
KYP James,
Kevin G.
And we are here today with a special guest, a mentor of mine, and the founder of Master Your Talk, Brenden.
Hi, everybody. It's Brenden. Great to be here, everyone. Always good to see you guys. Thanks for having me on.
And we were discussing in the previous episode about business partners, how it was important to have great people to support you and also lift you up from difficult times. And that is why today we want to discuss on number one, why having business partner is important and what circumstances having business partner is good. Number two, the divorce rate on business partners. And number three, what was number three?
Nobody achieves success or makes it on their own.
What Kevin said. And so let's jump directly into it. And I think the best person to ask this is Brenden. How is it with your business partners currently?
Yeah, for sure, Danny. You know, for me, I always like to present a balanced viewpoint on business partners because there's actually cases why you shouldn't have one. I think it's important to explore both sides. So like before I met Vamsi and Venkat, who are my current two business partners, though Vamsi is my main one, I never really had an interest in having a business partner. And the reason is because since we talked about my work ethic last time on the pod, I'm obviously someone who works really hard. So if I feel someone isn't putting in the same work as I am, which is really hard to find, I get really annoyed. I go, well, if I'm putting in 10 hours a day and you're putting in 7, I'll immediately start doing the math in my head and it'll create resentment just because of the nature of my personality. So in what cases does it make sense to have a business partner? And the frame I always like to present is, and it's a weird frame, so hear me out on it, is if they scammed you out of all of your money, all of your resources, and all of your time, you would still walk away the better person. If that is true, then you should be business partners with them. Let me give you an example with Vamsi, so this makes a lot more sense. Why is Vamsi the perfect business partner as me? Because I will say, and he says this openly, he does not work the same hours I do. Right? Obviously, I'm crazy. Like, I work like 70, 80, 90 hours a week. This is all I do. But Vamsi doesn't do that. He has a family, right? He can't put in the same hours as me. But he's still my 50-50 partner, and I totally love and respect him. Why is that? Because the value he has delivered to me for free in my career has surpassed already all of the money or resources and fame I could ever get. I'll give you an example that we talked about before that I'll bring back. He gave me my first 10 clients. Like, if he never gave me those clients, there's no way I would have charged clients. There's no way I would have had the guts to charge $3,000 when I was getting started. Now $3,000 feels like a joke to me, and I don't charge that more. I charge a lot more now. But when I was starting, I was like, $3,000 US dollars? Like, I would go crazy, like American dollar. And I was doing the conversion in my head to Canadian. I was like, wow, this is wild when people started paying us. But he's the reason I actually started it. He's the one who told me to do a group program. He's the person who coached me one-on-one, spent all those hours, didn't charge me $1. He even put me in a $30,000 mastermind by a guy named Taki Moore. It's basically a program that helps people who are doing $100,000 in their coaching business do $1 million plus. So that's why he charges so much money and why a lot of people join it. I don't have 30 grand. I was making 70K a year at IBM. Like, I was never going to spend that money. Whereas he just put me in the program and didn't ask me for $1. Right? So because he invested so much in me, the value of Vamsi exceeded any possible ramifications from that partnership. So every time something happens between us, I always assume it's my fault. And that's what's created long lasting. And since you're here, right, my media partner, Danny, is another great example of this, though he might think my framing is weird because he's right in front of me. He's like, wait a minute, I'll never scam Brenden. What is he talking about? Right? So it doesn't make sense. So Danny was there long before anyone else did. He actually reviewed my first video for Master Talk. And obviously it sounds cool today for me to go, oh yeah, you know, posting content is easy. I post 4 times a day on Instagram and I can brag all I want. But the first day I posted content, I was scared shitless. I was like, oh my God, like I'm a kid. No one's going to take me seriously. So I still remember that meeting. I went to Danny And I showed him my video, and he's the one who kind of encouraged me and pushed me. But he didn't just do that in that moment. He did that from the beginning of our friendship. He even bought a suit for me. He helped me out get something when I didn't have a lot of money. And he took like 4 hours out of his day to like get me a discount somewhere and make sure I was well dressed for this competition.
Oh, wow.
He's always had my back from the
Yes.
beginning. And that's why I chose him as my partner to begin with.
Well, thank you for being there for me too when I needed you the most.
For sure, man.
It makes sense. It's like, do they offer kind of intrinsic value to you? Like, even though it's kind of like they taught you how to fish so well that even if they stole all your fish from there, you know, it's still, you're still up. Interesting. Okay. That's a cool perspective. I actually like that framing. I think it's very visual to me.
So someone that goes above and beyond without any return back because they believe in you already.
Well said, James. Like
Okay.
a good analogy in dating is like you don't just go on a first date and ask that person to marry you. Like they think you're crazy,
Yeah.
right? You flirt a little bit, you go on a couple of dates, and then you build the momentum over time. And that's, I just don't know what the terminology would be in business partnership, but that's what happened with me and Vamsi, though obviously we're not in a relationship. In the context of, we didn't start the day after and go, hey, let's do this program for $3K and split the revenue. That's not how it worked. It was literally, let's start coaching each other for free. And then we just started helping each other.
I see.
And then 6 months later, he was like, hey, are you comfortable coaching kids? And I said, sure. Like, okay, coach my son, coach some of our clients' kids. Let's charge them like $500 a piece. And that's how we started. And then we got a flow for each other's work ethic. And after a year, it became obvious that we should be partners. Same thing with Danny, right? We started doing videos together. He was making mistakes. I was making a ton of mistakes in the videos. But after 6 months, I think the big thing is we just liked working together. I was like, well, if I think about the number of issues I've had with Danny, the number is actually very, 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 very tiny relative to the benefit. So it made sense for us to keep going.
Also, I've noticed, well, working with you, right? I've realized that when it comes to having business partner, a lot of people want to get business partners because they're like, yo, you're my friend, you're my bro. Let's work together. Let's achieve this dream. But a lot of people don't realize that having business partner is more than being friends. You develop a close relationship with them, like a blood relationship almost. But what's important is that they pull the weight and they complete what you cannot do. And so when Brenden and I worked together, I remember I sent an entire Google Docs to Brenden and said, hey, Brenden, here's all the equipment you need to buy. This is how you use it. Brenden looked at that sheet for a week, came back to me and was like, you know what? Can you film my video instead?
10 minutes, actually.
A week.
And that brings to also another point where I used to work with Jay. We used to run a social media company together and everything. And we used to complete one another because Jay was so creative and he came up with all these great ideas, all these crazy stuff, which I would never think of. I would never dare to like think of the things that Jay think of. But I would be able to, how do you execute all these things that Jay thought of? And that's why we work so well together. Is Jay was what he called himself the ionary, and I was just a fixer, where he said, I want to get this shot above this beam and I don't know how. And I said, okay, I'll climb on there and I'll risk myself falling 12th floor down to my death to get that shot.
Also, he's a good, I don't know, in terms of with Danny, it's creatively we sort of mesh well. And when we would do a shoot, I think I'm just a good support to you because I know exactly how he works, how he, because he's dealing with so many things on a shoot, right? He's doing the photography, the styling, the lighting, everything. I don't know what you're going through, but if something is wrong on the model's shirt, or I know exactly how it should look, and I think just working together with Danny is just a pleasure, just because our personalities match as well. We don't butt heads ever.
Yeah.
I think complementary differences is something very important in good partnerships, relationships. You know, even in a romantic relationship, I'm realizing having complementary differences is, is kind of what makes it work in the long term. Because if you guys are too similar, you're both, you know, you have a NBA team full of shooters. Everybody shoots. Nobody can get a rebound. You know, you have to complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I feel like that tends to make the strongest partners, the strongest teams, the strongest relationships. And that's something I learned over time, because I think when you're young, my approach to making friends is like, oh, he's just like me. He likes, he likes RuneScape, or he likes League of Legends. RuneScape, selling lobbies, 250 each. But yeah, I used to, for me, relationships, like I used to always find girls who are kind of similar like me, outgoing, kind of center of the party, and it would be great at the beginning, but then for the long distance,
it would clash.
It's clash because our, what we need is the same and what we offer is the same, so sometimes the needs aren't met.
100%.
Dude, you articulated that so well. I completely agree, right? Because if Danny wasn't talented at media, it doesn't matter how close we would be as friends. He could never be my business partner, right? And I could never be his in the context of media. So it's important to have that complementary skill set. Same thing with me and V, right? Me and Vamsi, where I'm like we did like a human design work. It's a little woo-woo, it's a little spiritual, but it's basically like it's a chart that tells you what kind of human being you are. And I'm what we call a generator. So a generator is always, you are too. You're like full of energy. You're always going ba 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 ba, jumping in up and down and going crazy. And he is what we call a projector, which is somebody more like James, right? So James is more of a projector, from what I've gathered anyways, just based on your energy, where it's like they don't mind sitting back and listening to the conversation, but they'll come up with an insight, going back to the crazy ideas that you brought in the agency business, that completely changed the trajectory. So I'm the horse who's kind of running 100 miles an hour, and he's the eagle in the sky, kind of making sure I don't crash into a wall. And that's why the partnership works really well. Whereas if he was like me, oh my God, it'd be chaos. I would hate to be partners with me. Literally, I would hate it.
Same here, yeah.
And we were talking more about like our experience as business partners and the current business partners we have. I want to dive deeper into looking for one, right? If someone came out of the blue and said, hey, I have no fucking idea how to do like numbers, is it more of a thing where you do the numbers until you find someone who can do the numbers, or are you actively seeking to find a person is good with numbers?
Yeah, for sure, Danny. For me personally, because it's easy for people on social media to go, yeah, you got to delegate this and find. It doesn't make sense if you're making less than $100,000 a year. Like literally, it's stupid advice unless you're raising a lot of money in a tech startup. So for me, the advice for anyone looking for a business partner is don't let that be the excuse to start a business. You should start it regardless. Whether you ever find a business partner, that was my mentality from day one. Even if somebody like Vamsi never existed, I still would have went forward with Master Talk regardless, and me and Danny just would have figured it out. I would have figured somebody else out for the business side, not the media, because I had him from day one. But even if Danny wasn't there, I'd still figure something out. So you start by saying regardless, kind of like in relationships. I know it's a weird analogy, but it makes sense, where the best time to find somebody that actually loves you is for you to be okay being alone.
Right.
So when you get to that space, when you actually find that person, you're actually a lot more comfortable around them.
Yeah.
You don't have an anxiety attachment style. You're not like, man, where are you every second, every day? You just go, cool. Like we call that in psychology a secure attachment style, right? So it's the same thing in the context of business, where I was perfectly fine working my hours and doing my thing. But the key mistake that most people make, going back to communication, is they don't tell everybody what business they're starting. So I'm just using him because he's right in front of me, right? Why did he become a partner? It didn't just magically happen. He didn't just wake up and go, I think my spidey sense is tingling. I think Brenden might be starting something.
Brenden needs me right now.
Yeah, he might do that from time to time with suits or something. But it was actually and I'll take credit for this, and that's the advice. You have to tell every living soul that you know that you're starting a business. So I told everybody, but back then it wasn't a business. So I'd tell everybody that I went to school with. Let's say we went to school together. I'd literally come up to you, yo, Kevin, I'm starting this YouTube channel on public speaking. I don't know what to call it. This is what I'm doing. So I did that with literally, and I want people to hear this, 2,000 people.
Wow.
2,000 people?
Like 2,000 people, but not like one-on-one. Most of those were DMs on LinkedIn.
Gotcha.
But like, I think I knew maybe 200-300 people personally. I went to all of them. I told all of them about Master Talk.
And the ones that really connect will come back to you.
Right? Right? That's really the key. And I even do this today. Like when we first met, because I feel like I've known you for so long, Kevin.
Yeah,
but
it
I was like, I feel like I already know this guy. But the second you started saying, hey, I watch your stuff all the time, I immediately think, oh, Kevin's feedback is probably more useful than anyone else I could talk to about Master, because he actually is invested. Same thing with all of you guys, right? You're all invested in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But out of those 200-300 people, I found Danny right away was a media partner. And then 9 months later, when I went to the conference, once again, this is the mistake that people make. They don't tell people. Let me phrase this differently. Like whenever you're introducing yourself, let's say at a networking cocktail, and you have a side hustle, most people go like, oh, James, what do you do? And you'll just talk about the job.
I work at the bank.
9 to 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. I work at a bank. I'm a bank teller, or I'm a bank manager or something.
Yeah.
But they won't say, hey, like I'm working on this thing.
I'm a KYP co-host.
Yeah.
KYP
Yeah.
podcast.
It took me a
co-host,
long
yeah.
time to get comfortable even saying that as the second thing.
I still don't say it. Like
You don't say it? Yeah.
I people mention it before I mention it. Oh yeah, I heard you're in the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So my advice, and I love
Yeah.
this. It's like live coaching on the spot. Is I would encourage you to be more vocal about it, because that's what creates the activation in the universe to actually find more opportunities for yourself. So one of those examples, that's actually how I met Vamsi. The story was where it's 5 a.m. We're doing this NFL workout by like an NFL Super Bowl champion guy, and I'm dying. It's called like the deck of pain, where you take, like cards, right?
Yeah.
So you, like an ace of hearts or whatever, and every single card was an exercise you had to do. Okay, team, 10 of clovers, you have to do 10 burpees. I was like, shit, I'm gonna die from this workout, because it was like an NFL workout. So at the end, I talked to Vamsi for 5 minutes. That's how long the conversation was, team. 5 minutes. And he just asked me what I did. And I didn't say consultant at IBM. I said, and I wasn't even that good at telling people what I did, because I was nervous about it too.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, I do YouTube. And he started laughing. He's like, what are you doing YouTube videos on? Like pranks or something? I was like, no. I'm making, and I was super embarrassed because I was 23. So I was like, yeah, I make videos on effective communication. And the second I said that, he was like, huh, fascinating. A kid is
That's a
making,
niche. Yeah.
Yeah, like what is this
That's
kid?
uncommon. Like immediately, it's uncommon.
Especially from a 23-year-old kid.
Would have expected, a video game streamer,
Yeah,
prank
whatever
videos.
those, yeah.
And me saying those things out of my mouth is why I'm sitting here today. Just because I did that. If I never said anything, none of this would have happened, and I'd still be a brokey at IBM or something.
Yeah.
Dang.
Well, we've discussed a lot about potential of great partners, the potential of losing great partners because you don't talk about it, but not a lot of people talk about the potential of losing your partner while you're in a partnership with them. There's a lot of disagreement you get with a lot of people. I'm lucky enough that I rarely disagree with Brenden. Brenden, he is very respectful of my time, and I am very respectful of his opinion too. But in certain cases, like let's say James and I, we came to a lot of disagreement when we were running RXR, mostly with another business partner that we were running with RXR. And that caused how do you say it?
Turmoil?
No, it's just
Disbanded?
we disbanded and went our separate ways. And I wanted to discuss about why a lot of business partners who thought they had great ideas, who thought they could be working great along with one another, end up disbanding, never talking to each other, as if nothing special was created between all of them.
Have you had a business breakup before?
I actually haven't. I mean, I've had breakups before, like in the context of like,
Yeah.
I mean, not real. I actually don't even mean relationships. I mean friendships.
Yeah.
Okay.
So where like I was friends with somebody and it just didn't work out. And I think the answer to that point that you drove, Danny, is it really goes back to vision. I know I've been wolfing vision all day today, but the reason it's so important is because it allows you to really understand where that person is. Let's use an analogy back to relationships. Let's say you're dating this girl and she's super attractive, she's amazing, she's everything you want, and you sit her down, you go, do you want kids? And you do. And she goes, not in a million years. I would never want kids.
Yeah.
Never.
Turn off.
It doesn't matter. Well,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't say necessarily turn off, but it's a turn off to you,
To
the
the
person who does.
Yeah.
So it's not, and this is really where I want to emphasize, is I think 80% of disagreement, there's obviously 20% where people are just crazy. And I mean that in business and relationships, but where there's nothing wrong with the girl. It's just she has a different vision for her relationship than you do. But bringing this back to business now, that's where the core issue is. Oh, I met Kevin at a bar and we hit it off and he's super cool. Let's just start $1 billion company together. Oh, yeah, I saw James at the school. We have the same degree. I mean, he probably likes the same things I do. So let's just start a business. Wrong idea. Instead, what you want to do is you do small little projects together. That's what me and V did at the beginning. And I'm sure all of you did that too. You start with little projects and then you have a thoughtful conversation around vision. That's why I think 80% of this game is in selection, not just in business and relationships, where you're selecting the right partner. So I asked V, actually he did it because he's more mature than I am. He's like 20 years older than I am. So he asked me like, hey, Brenden, what's your vision for Master Talk in the business? And I told them, and I asked him what his was. And our visions were like perfectly aligned. Even today, we still have those conversations. And then the other 20% that I've said in previous podcasts is like, most problems you have with partners, it should be solved in the mind. So what do I mean by this? So let's say I'm frustrated with Vamsi about something, just something that triggers me because of my childhood or something. 80% of those problems should actually be solved by me because that has nothing to do with Vamsi. It's more about me taking a step back and going, why is this triggering me? Why is this bothering me? Because Vamsi's not doing anything bad here. He's just, I don't know, maybe he forgot to send me the money. Let's use that. It's a petty example. He was supposed to send me the money Friday, but he got really busy, so he sent it on Saturday. Oh, and so you get stories in your mind, because I grew up in a really poor family, where I would go, oh my God, this guy's trying to steal money from me. And I was like, where are these stories coming from? And then you realize that you're the problem, not them.
What Brenden mentioned is super important, because how I explain to people too is that it always takes two to tango. But at the end of the day, if one person can dance by himself, herself, there would be no problem. If the other person danced by himself, herself, would be no problem. But then once they meet up, there's tension. There's nothing wrong about each person, but it's when the two butt heads that then there's a problem. And I've realized that when it comes to vision too, like you mentioned, a lot of people, they say, let's build $1 billion business. And they say, yeah, we line up. Our visions are very similar. We want to build a podcast, make millions of dollars, billions of dollars, retire to the Bahamas and call it a day. But now, how do we get there? And that's where the vision changes. A lot of people say, let's say if I take the example with Brenden and I, if I told Brenden, I want you to pay me all the videos that you're making all in advance, and I don't want to hear from you any comments, and I just want you to come here once every 3 months to film, and you get the fuck out of my studio, he would never work with me. But instead,
100%, yeah.
I mean, who talks like that?
you'd be surprised.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, hey?
A lot of agencies are like, yeah, you don't fit our budget, just get out.
Shit.
Brenden says, hey, I don't have a lot of money right now. I can offer you this much to make my video. I said, hey, you know what? That's more than enough. I'll help you out as much as we can. We can renegotiate. And that's how we build the relationship. Because at the end of the day, how I looked at building a relationship with people, I don't really care about the end result. For me, it's the journey. How do we build that journey? And that's why I think James and I, we had a very similar vision, where we cared more about building a vision rather than having the end result. And that's why I think with the third partner who wanted a grandiose ending and wanted to have the fame,
the
the
superficial
fortune,
outcomes,
everything,
yeah.
That's when we started butting heads. And
So, yeah, I mean, in that situation, I think I understand from that other person's point of view, had a different situation than us. So it had to happen faster for that person. Than for us. So not in hindsight. Back then we did not know that person's situation, but now that I think about it, that's probably what happened. I don't know. We probably would have to get him and talk about it. But
yeah, exactly.
On the next episode,
it was a beautiful relationship.
The host who never came, who never showed up.
On the next episode of Dragon Ball Z.
It was a beautiful relationship. I think we had really good intentions, and I think if we had, like you said, 80% of the time settled our own issues before taking it on other people, I think we would have kept going. But we were young. We were 21, 22, and shit happens. To reduce it down to that, shit happens.
It's kind of like joining forces for the right reasons, right? Because if your bond is founded upon like really superficial, surface level things, we're just together to make $1 billion, or in relationships, I'm just with this girl because she's a bombshell, 10 out of 10 trophy wife, versus I really connect with her as a person. She shares the same values. She has the same priorities.
And a thing with the podcast, like we've been doing it for 2 years.
We came from that perspective. We never thought we were going to make money.
Yeah. We had that conversation about what we would do with $1 million, $1 billion. But I think as we were going through the process and as we were posting episodes and shorts, and then we got people reaching out to us being like, hey, this really helped me out. I've been going through a similar issue with Kevin or Danny or James. And, thank you for sharing. And that, just sending, and then we sent it to each other on Messenger, like, yo, this person commented this, like wow, like what, like at one comment like put me up to tears. There was one mom talking about her son and how she would like her son to watch this podcast when he's a bit older.
Wow.
Because I want him to grow up like men like you guys.
Wow.
So it was like these little things, these perks that we never expected. Makes us keep going,
Definitely.
Really awesome.
Yeah, helping others.
And Brenden, I wanted to ask you, in terms of just let's take vision out of the way, do you think that there's other factors that come in, big disagreement, and why divorce rates are so big among business partners?
Yeah, I think going back to great examples, by the way, you too. I really love that. For me, the other piece is constant, consistent communication. Because the problem with vision is visions change really quickly. So Vamsi actually asked me this. He does this all the time where we're in like Florida. We're in the middle of nowhere because we never meet in Montreal, right? I'm always meeting him in the US where we have quarterly, and I'll meet him in the middle of the year too sometimes. And we're at the beach and we're looking at the sun and he'll just look at me and go, what is the thing that you hate the most about me?
Yeah, that's asking.
Seems interesting.
Like he's very zen, but we're not fighting. He'll just ask me like a random question. Brenden, what do you think I should do better about my life? Where do you think I'm weak at? So because he's more mature than I'm actually matured a lot faster because Vamsi's my business partner, because he's just been through a lot more life than I have. Like he's been through 20 years of more problems and disagreements. I mean, he's happily married for 17 years. So there you go. He's learning a lot there too. And because he's proactively asking these questions, it makes me think. Because in my mind, I honestly wasn't even thinking that. What is something I hate about Vamsi? What is, because I actually really, because he was, and that's really the key, is you want to have these conversations when the business is going well, when the relationship is going well.
I see.
Right? And when he started asking me these questions, he said, well, it's okay if you don't have any feedback from me, but I want you to think it over for 2-3 days and I'll do the same with you. So because he's leading and he's asking the question first, it actually makes me a lot more comfortable sharing things that are bothering me because he's a really mature individual. So it created a lot less disagreement in the business. And we still do that today because now my vision, by the way, me and his vision now is very different for the business. But because we're able to meet in the middle, it's really easy to still operate the company. And one example that I'm super open with is like now I manage most of the business myself, but we're still splitting the revenue, right? So it's like, oh my God, like this caused a lot of frustration at the beginning. But then I thought about it and I was like, well, I still want him to coach me and I'm still willing to pay him whatever. So I'm really happy with the partnership and what we've been able to accomplish. But that's just one example.
Yeah, that exercise makes sense to me because like if you don't address those uncomfortable conversations while the business is doing well, when are they going to come up? Oh, when shit hits the fan.
Exactly.
And then
It's being proactive.
Yeah.
But that takes a lot of maturity and security.
What do you hate about me, Kevin?
It's tough, man.
On the next episode.
On the next episode, this is the last episode.
This will be the
Why does Kevin hate
KYP
James?
breaks up right after this.
breaking news.
Episode 45, we're breaking up.
We were almost there, guys. We're almost
And
there.
then we made the biggest mistake of entering Brenden in the whole
Yeah,
thing.
Brenden fucks us up.
I wanted to bring the conversation back to the final topic of this podcast, which is, do you really need business partners? because at the end of the day, you look at all these successful entrepreneurs, all these successful business owners, they are by themselves. But one thing you've noticed is that despite the fact that they do not have any business partners, they always have someone they can fall back into. So the question now turns from, do you really need business partner, to actually, is it okay to reach out when you don't know something?
For sure, Danny. And there's two frames to how we solve that problem. So there's, do we need people? Do we need business partners? Do we need people? Absolutely. Like there's a great quote Vamsi actually shares with me that I love. And he says, the bigger the dream, the better the team. And what he means by that is the bigger dream you have for your life, the better your team is. But now teams can be defined, because teams could be co-founders. It could be a VA in the Philippines that's just working really, really well for you, who's doing a great job. It could be somebody who's local. And then it's up to you to figure out the structure. And then you take a step back and figure out the best. Like I'll give you the counter example. For me, business partnership worked perfectly. Like I love it so much and I'm growing and I'm having so much fun. But Chris Do, right, the founder of The Future, he hates business partners, right? He's tried it so many times and he's way more successful than I am. And he does not recommend it because it just doesn't fit his personality. And it's worth emphasizing, there's a reason why there's no other personalities on Master Talk and it's just me. Because with the business, I'm actually really open to having partners. Media, I'm not. Maybe
Non-negotiable, eh?
Non-negotiable. Because
Yeah.
I just don't think other coaches, and I say this really honestly, I just don't think other coaches have the same level of depth of expertise. Don't get me wrong. Me and Danny are thinking of doing 1 or 2 clips on like gear and stuff, things that he's really good at, because I need some help for those types of videos. But in terms of my expertise, I'm actually not open to it. Like I've been offered a couple of times, say, do you want to co-host this with me? And I said, no, like I don't actually want to do that. Like I'd really.
In regards to communication?
Yeah, it could be,
Yeah.
it was more of an interview style show. And this is with one of my best friends.
Gotcha.
This is not even like some random person. This is somebody that like I love. And he was like, hey, you want to just, and I said, no, man, I actually don't. Like we would hate each other. I would get really picky about the editing and how the style, and we just wouldn't work together. So yeah, that's my thought.
But do you
Fair
think that
enough.
vision is more along the line of, I know how to do it and I don't trust anyone else to do it better than I do?
So this is why I like presenting a balanced front. So there's some, actually, here's another way of thinking about this, because I want to make this easy to digest. There's a great quote by Patrick Collison. He's the CEO and founder of Stripe, the payments company that a lot of us know. It's a massive, one of the biggest unicorns right now in the world. And he said something really fascinating. He said that the best CEOs in the world listen to everyone and ignore everyone all at the same time. And I was like, what does he mean by that? And he goes, well, and he doesn't just mean the context of CEOs. He was talking about business, but I actually think that's life, because all of us are CEOs of our own life, right? And what he meant was you should listen to everybody's perspective, but ultimately you have a direction where you want to take the brand and the vision for your life, and you should ultimately make the final say on that. So let's say in the context of, let's say me and Danny's business partnership or media, I always listen to his feedback, but there's a specific reason, because he understands my brand. Right? Because he knows me, like he knows every little inch. So whenever he gives me opinion, I listen really closely to what he's saying. But ultimately, I always make the final decision on what the creative strategy is for Master Talk, right? So I'm comfortable in that. Same thing in business. In business, I'm actually really different. I actually don't really like building businesses. I like coaching people a lot. So I'm a lot more open. I'm a lot less antsy about it. So if Vamsi goes, hey, let's try this, I'm more like, yeah, we should try this. Let's do it. He's probably smarter than me. So I think the key, throwing it back to you guys now, is taking a step back and being self-aware. And what parts of the business are you really, really stuck on that you're like, you're stubborn? And that's okay, unless it gets dangerous. And then the other piece is going, what are the parts of the business that I think, like media is something I never wanted to do. That's why Danny was a really good partner for me.
So James, in terms of your opinion on that, right? Because you've always been the quiet person in the back, not doing like very hands-on things. You always have the best ideas, and in your mind, like, how do you feel about, like, do you feel like delegating more the task to people who know better, or is it more along the line of, do you just prefer staying back and taking the sort of, how do you say, the devil's advocate route?
He's like the mediator.
Yeah, the mediator.
I always, the reason why I reached out to you many years ago, and again for the podcast, is because I know you are an expert in what you do. and I'm never gonna be like, oh, I feel like you should do this, this editing or this on the board. I'm never gonna tell you what to do, because I respect you as a partner, as a friend, and I know exactly what you're capable of. As well as Kevin. Kevin is a great person for growth, for reaching out. So in my head, it's like I want to build a team for people, because I'm lacking. I'm not saying I'm the best. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I lack in visuals. I lack in reaching out. So I'm probably really good at vision. I'm probably really good at creativity. So how can I build a team where we can all work together? So I'm never going to tell you guys, oh, you should do this, you should do that. I don't want to control anything of what you guys do. I trust you guys 100%. That's why I reached out in the first place.
I think one thing that I don't know about you guys, if you're struggling in, that I struggle personally, is delegating. Delegating, especially as building your business larger and larger, you start developing this fear or this irrational behavior that you don't want to delegate because this is my baby. I know how to do it better than you. It's like anything I can do, anything you can do, I can do better. And even with the podcast, right? A lot of times the guys would just sit there and just look at me and I would plug all the cables. I know exactly where everything would go and I know exactly what shelf everything would be in. And I've started learning that if I want to grow this and if I want to go beyond what my simple brain vision is right now, I need to ask Kevin to help me out. I need to ask James to help me out. Mm-hmm. And so I taught them how to install the lights, how to plug in the boards, how to do all of this. I trusted Kevin fully in taking care of the outreach. I trusted Jay completely about touching online media, social media. And so far we've grown a lot. And I wanted to know, Kevin, your input about how you think being having business partners and having people who understand you really help you grow as a person.
Yeah, I think, the immediate thought that comes to mind is complementary differences. And I feel like that is something that is at the core of why we've had such smooth kind of experience with working on this project. I feel like everyone has a clear role, and that role complements each other. I wanted to do media. I wanted to put myself out there. I've never opened an editing app. I've never seen this shit in my life before I met Danny. Remember the first few times I came to your studio at your apartment? I was like, oh my God, wow, this is so sick. It looks just like on Joe Rogan. I was freaking out on
I would have said the same thing.
The most basic stuff. And so I knew, if I wanted to do this project, I had to, rely on partners. And then, I feel like for James, his he has that creative direction. He has when it comes to designing our brand and how we appear on social media, he has a great contribution there. But I think another place where he adds a lot of value is being the mediator in our group. Because I feel like because he's kind of that... he was like the hawk, the Overwatch.
Yeah, the eagle. Yeah.
Like, if we were a military squad, you're the sniper overwatching,
watching our backs.
Terrain.
Yeah.
And because of your personality, you're kind of more in the background. You see things between me and Danny who are probably, compared to you, stronger personalities. And you kind of help us mediate the three of us and the two of us. And I feel like that's why we've avoided a lot of kind of big conflicts. Like, I wouldn't say everything has been an agreement, right? But what I love about our team is the way we navigate disagreements. It's very peaceful. Like, I think we all have a intention to preserve
the vision,
preserve the social harmony, even if we have disagreements or we have different ideas. It was a bit, but we developed that skill. At the beginning, I think it was more, when we were having disagreements on what topics we should have, or how we should present the podcast or whatnot. It was kind of the disagreements and debates would be more in your face, but now like we've learned to take the ego out a lot more, and it's kind of like when we hear a different idea, it's just like, okay, yeah, it's a different idea. Nobody kind of is stubborn in their own way.
Yeah.
We're always open to each other's criticism, and I think if we
Open
don't
communication, as Brenden said, communicate.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask, we wanted to ask Brenden one last question. Really, you specialize in communication, and understandably, you are an expert in the communication field. Now, what line do you draw until you say, I need help within my line of expertise?
Within my own line of expertise.
Correct.
So I'll broaden out the question a little bit more in the sense of when does it make sense to delegate? When does it make sense to not delegate? So where I would start with is to make a list of everything that you're doing in the business. And you could even do this if you have a career, right? Just the things that you're doing. Maybe you're washing dishes after you go home, you're cooking. Just make a list of all of those things. And then what you do is you put those things into 4 different categories, right? You either, actually two main ones to keep it simple for today, is you really, really hate it, or you really, really love it. The more advanced way of doing this is like a mix between how good you are versus how much you love it. So for example, one quadrant would be, I really, really love this and I'm really, really good at it. So coaching would be an example for me. And the other end of the spectrum is I really, really hate it and I'm really, really bad at it. Editing would be an example of that. So Danny's perfect. But that where it gets tricky though is the nuance in the middle. Especially, I really, really hate it, but I'm really talented at it. So one example like that in my business is sales. So I don't really like it that much, but I'm good at it because I know how to sell people into my offer. So I need to do that. So the answer becomes more nuanced where, okay, if I'm doing less than 500K a year, I need to be leading the sales or else we're going to bleed so much cash. But the second I pass, let's say I'm just using 500K as a number. The second I pass that, then I need to start delegating to other people and start managing it, even if it's going to cost me a little bit of money short term. But now to answer Danny's question directly, which is, okay, but what about within my own field? So I'm fortunate where there's most of the problems in the business I can just solve on my own related to coaching. But what I try to do, and this is actually one of my big weaknesses because of that, I'm a little cocky, so I need to get better at this, is learning from other experts who are smarter than me, who are doing better than me. So for example, I still haven't read that many communication books because I'm just really bad with books. Like I fall asleep after like a few hours of doing that.
Yeah.
So Vamsi challenged me to do that more. And I have flown a few times out to like LA and different places just to learn from other communication coaches. But honestly, it's a big gap for me. It's something I need to get better at for sure.
And so that was a very interesting conversation with Brenden on how to pick your business partner. Brenden, any final thoughts, remarks, insults?
Yeah, I think the final thought for me, just around speaking, finding a business partner, the last point I'll make on this is follow your own intuition. Some part of you will know if that's the right person. The best way to do that is just to talk to a lot of people. I think the biggest mistake most people listening to this are making is volume. You're just not talking to enough people. Like when I was at Summit of Greatness, I talked to maybe 100 people, and one of those people was Vamsi. When I started Master Talk, I told 200 people in person, literally in person, about my idea, and I found one Danny, right? So for you to get to that one Danny, that one Vamsi, that one James, that one Kevin in your life, you need to talk to 100 other fish just about your ideas and your projects in general to get in line and find the right partner. So that's what I encourage people to do is volume is super underrated. So really, really push that volume to get the result.
Perfect. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to ask Brenden, feel free to leave it in the comments or the suggestion box. As always, my name's Danny. I'm here with my co-host,
KYP James.
Kevin G.
Where can we find you, Brenden?
Of course, great to be here. Thanks for having me, everyone. Such a great show. So yeah, 2 ways to keep in touch, team. Number 1 is the YouTube channel. Just go to Master Talk in one word. You'll have access to hundreds of free videos on how to speak for free. And the second way to get access to us is through our website, rockstarcommunicator.com. I host a free online workshop over Zoom that we do every 2 weeks for the community. So if you want to jump on that, you could be a $1 billion CEO, you could be a high schooler, it doesn't really matter. And you can go to that website and just sign up for the next training.
Perfect. So thank you for listening to the KYP podcast. And remember,
KYP.
Kill your pride, baby.